What's up guys, this week we're reviewing the 2022 Jeep Wrangler Willy Sport. Now I've looked at a bunch of YouTube videos and they all seem to be talking about the Rubicon 392 with the 6.4 liter Hemi. Which is an awesome car, don't get me wrong, but it's 80 grand. This Willy Sport right here, well, it's $36,000 and some change, which is still a lot of money, but a little bit more affordable. This is gonna be the everyday man's Wrangler, and I think that's why I chose to review this one for you today. Now before we hit the road, we're gonna go to somewhere a little bit more quiet. We're in Key Biscayne, we're right next to the highway, and while the ocean is beautiful, I think it's gonna be a little bit too noisy for our review. And before we do anything, we can put this roof down. Now a cool feature in the Wrangler is that it actually has this QR code here, which links to a YouTube video that shows you how to lower it. Now I've done this before, so I know that I just have to pull this tab back here. Now this thing is actually really dangerous. It's got all these gears and stuff and you can get your hands caught in it if you're not careful. Now technically what you're supposed to do is tie a little wrap that comes in the glove box, tie that around there to hold this down, but I'm just gonna leave that like that because I'm a little bit lazy. All right, now that we have our top down, we can go to our next location where we're actually gonna do the review. And let's pull out here. Let's do a 0 to 60. Let's start it off here. So we're not exactly at 0, but we can be. Start at 0, check our mirror, and let's just go for it. And that's 60 right there. Can't go too fast here because the speed limit is 40. You know, it's sporty. This has the 3.6 liter V6 engine, so you know, it's a pretty, I would say, standard engine for this car. This is the same engine that they're putting in some of the 1500s. It's the same engine they're putting in the Durango, so it's definitely enough power for the Wrangler. Now I'll talk more about this in the driving section of the video, but for now I would say that the Wrangler has plenty of power, especially for city driving, for wanting to pick up behind people. It doesn't have the smoothness of the V8 engines that the 392 is going to have. You know, it does take a few seconds for it to gear down and sort of stuff like that, but really it's pretty good, and I really do like this engine. I don't feel like it's underpowered. Now that we're in a quieter place, I can get to the review of this 2022 Jeep Wrangler Willy Sport. Now this is gonna be the base model Jeep. It's the second to nicest one that you can get, which basically means it's not very nice at all. It's just a basic Jeep, but I think it's what Jeeps were meant to be. What the Wrangler was meant to be is an off-road, rugged vehicle, not some fancy $80,000 thing with all kinds of leather seats and all this stupid stuff you don't really need. Now the first thing I need to say about the Wrangler is that this is a really good looking truck. I mean, when somebody shows up in a Wrangler, you're like, wow, what a nice car. And it's because they've done a lot of changes over the years to it. You might think, well, they haven't changed the Wrangler since they invented it, but go back and look. I'll throw some pictures up on screen so you can see just how much it has actually changed over the years, and it makes for a really nice final product. This car is a good looking car, and anybody who has one is kind of immediately accepted into the nice cars club. You don't really have to do any modifications for this thing to look nice. Now I showed you the 0 to 60 for the Jeep Wrangler, which was nothing to write home about, but was still pretty good. I'm going to talk about the interior and exterior and talk about some pros and cons of the car. I'm going to talk about the maintenance and reliability factor, which has always been sort of a problem for the Wrangler and maybe the reason why you wouldn't buy one. And then finally, I'm going to tell you whether I personally would buy this car and whether I recommend for you to buy it. Now we'll make our way around the car, starting with the grille. Now apparently it's got 7 of these billets, or whatever you want to call them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, because Jeep was the first car to make it to all 7 continents. And now I heard that, I don't know if that's true, but you can tell me if it is in the comments. Take a look at this nice plastic bumper that's on the front here. It's got some painted sections to it. It's got this fog light. Jeeps used to kind of be cheap looking, and especially the base model ones, but this for a base model, I feel like is really nice. They don't have too many plastic pieces. This grille here is painted. Now our base model Willy Sport comes with these mud terrain, BF Goodrich tires. Now these things are pretty much garbage. They do have a good tread to them, but other than that, I was out in the rain with this thing last night whipping it around since it is a rental car, and it was slipping all over the place, so maybe that's something to upgrade. Nice rims though, take a look at these. These are not something that you see on a base model most of the time. Trunk itself is not bad. It's not huge, but it's bigger than a normal car, I'm guessing. It's got this little plug back here, and under the floor you have a little storage compartment, which is pretty cool. And then you got a place to put all of your pins when you take the door hinges off and when you take the roof off. And when you take this part off here, you have all of your stuff to change your tire in case you need to change your tire. And guess what? You got a spare right here, a nice good spare, a real one. Another con of having a base model Jeep is that there are no electronic components in the doors, and that goes for locking as well. If you want to lock and unlock your door, you actually have to do it the old-fashioned way with a key, which I'm really not used to in this car, and it's been hard for me to get used to that while I've been doing this review. Now the worst part that I found for this, if you want to unlock the back door, there's no keyhole, so you actually have to go in from the inside, find the unlock thing, pull it, and then the door opens. Now I think that's a little bit ridiculous, because guess what? If you want to lock it, you got to do the same. Stick your hand back, lock the door, and then you're locked. That was annoying when I went to the grocery store and I had to go to each door and lock it by hand. Now moving to the interior of the Wrangler, I'm super blown away. I think this is the place that Jeep has made the most changes to the Wrangler. The interior used to be disgusting. I'll throw a picture up on screen of what the Wrangler interior looked like just a couple of years ago, but now it's actually really nice. They have a lot of different materials that they're using in here, a sort of faux carbon fiber, a material that sort of looks like a flat brushed metal. It's got these nice climate controls here that are actually nice rubber buttons that you can really feel that have a metal component to them. They've got a panel there that looks like it's screwed in with actual metal screws. It's got that rugged off-roaded Wrangler feel that I really, really like. The steering wheel has everything you need in a command center right at your fingertips. You've got your cruise control features, you've got your Bluetooth features, you can control your radio, you can change the station, you can up the volume, change the song if you're using the Bluetooth feature. I'm really, really impressed. Now, the infotainment system in this Willy Sport is not going to be the top of the line screen, but at least you're getting a screen, and even though it's not the biggest one, it does the job. It does everything you need it to do. It has a compass feature and a climate feature where you can see what your climate controls are, and a radio and a media. But let's be real, what are most people going to do? They're going to plug in their phone, and yes, the Jeep Wrangler does have Apple CarPlay, and for me, that checks the box. That's all that's really important, because I think that's all that most people are going to use. For climate controls and stuff, you can use the actual buttons that are integrated in the dash, and that's what I've been doing driving around. I've never actually touched the screen to adjust my fan speed. So sitting in the back seat, there isn't that much room back here, but it's also not necessarily cramped. I'm 6 feet tall and my knees aren't touching. Obviously I'm in the middle, so it's a little bit more cramped. And over on the side, this is perfect. This is fine. That seat is adjusted for me and I can still fit in the back seat, no problem. As for amenities, well, there's not many amenities. There's nothing up front, so there's not gonna be much back here either. What can I tell you about? There's 2 cup holders. There's 2 vents that you can open and close. It's not going to be your own climate zone. It's going to be whatever the front seat passengers are doing. You have a little light here, I believe, which is enough light to light up a shoebox. One cool feature is when the roof is up, it's up for the back passengers too, so I like that. As for pros and cons in the Wrangler, well, most of the cons are just going to be the lack of amenities, the lack of features in this car. The fact that it doesn't have the automatic headlights, the fact that it doesn't have the automatic windows, the fact that it doesn't have the automatic locks. Well, these are all features that you can get if you invest a little bit more to get a higher trim Wrangler. Actual cons, like defects with this car that I really don't like, well, there aren't very many of those, I would say. I mean, the seats aren't that comfortable. That's the only one that really jumps out at me. This car would be really fun for city driving and sort of hopping around from point A to point B, but I wouldn't see myself doing long road trips in the Wrangler. I don't think that that would be very comfortable. Other than that, though, when it comes to build quality, the things that I've noticed that I really don't like, and these are definitely cons, these stocks here feel really, really cheap. This is supposed to be a rugged off-road car with hard, tough materials and stuff like that. But look at these things. These things are so cheap. They feel like they're going to break off in my hand. That's definitely something I noticed that I really don't like. The other thing that's really cheap and jumps out at you is this rear view mirror. This thing looks like they went to a scrap yard and pulled it for about $2 and threw it in this car. They could have put something a little bit more rugged, a little bit better, especially with a vehicle like this where it's important to be able to see around you and have good visibility. Now on to maintenance and reliability for the Jeep Wrangler. Now this is probably the area where it's going to do the worst out of all the categories. Now I looked at Consumer Reports to see what people were saying about its reliability, and I actually printed out the results, and they're not great. The Jeep gets an overall 2 out of 5 for reliability, and that's according to consumers. People have actually bought this thing and had to deal with it. I was checking the website this morning and there's already 3 recalls for this Wrangler. Now let's go through the list of why they say it's a 2 out of 5. Acceleration, it gets a 4 out of 5, and that I pretty much agree with. Transmission, 5 out of 5. Transmission is great. Braking, 2 out of 5. That I would agree with. This thing seems to fight you when you stop, and we'll talk about that when we get to the road test. Emergency handling, 2 out of 5. That would be a combination of braking and handling in emergency situation. The ride, it gets a 2 out of 5. Noise, it gets a 2 out of 5. Probably because of this canvas roof here. Front seat comfort, 3 out of 5. I would agree with that, maybe even give it a 2. Interior fit and finish, 3 out of 5. That sounds reasonable. Trunk and cargo area, 3 out of 5, acceptable. The fuel economy for the Jeep Wrangler is 18 mpg for overall, but the city is 13 and highway is 24. All right, driving the Wrangler, you realize just how far it's come. I used to absolutely hate the Wrangler because I was like, look, it's a box on wheels powered by a lawnmower, and that's really not the case anymore. The first thing you notice is just how well it handles and how much power it has now. This has come so far away from the days where this thing was so underpowered. It's felt like so heavy and bulky, and now it's really sporty. The word that comes to mind when you drive the Wrangler is nimble. This thing is nimble. It goes exactly where you want to go. It weaves through traffic really, really well. It is really noisy though, not the engine or the transmission or anything like that, but just like the wind. You can hear a lot of wind coming in. Those wheels with the big treads on them make a lot of noise. It's got that humming noise everywhere you go, basically. I think this is a car that would be good for the city, moving around, but doing the highway stuff, I mean, this is really loud, guys. I don't know if you can hear this, but this is super loud. The handling in this car is surprisingly impressive. The direction, it goes exactly where you tell it to go. You move your steering wheel just a tiny bit, and it moves exactly there. Let's cut off this car right here, be a little bit rude. And then it picks up fairly quickly. The acceleration, again, they give it a 4 out of 5. I think that's really accurate. This thing goes where you want it to go. It's good for pickup in the city. It takes off quickly, and it's good for pickup on the highway as well. I wouldn't say that you feel entirely secure though. I mean, there's been a lot of talk about how the Wrangler isn't that safe, that it could roll over and that sort of thing, and that's always in the back of your mind. Especially last night in the rain, I was sort of whipping around corners and stuff, and you get that little feeling in your stomach a little bit when you go around corners too fast. But overall, I would say the pros are the acceleration, really good acceleration, the handling in the direction, super precise, feels really good. Used to be totally loosey-goosey, felt like a shack on wheels. We're totally past that with the Wrangler. This thing is tight, it's precise, and it's got the handling of like a sport SUV. So definitely that is a pro. Cons, I would say the braking. When you go to stop in this car, it fights you. It doesn't want to stop. It wants to keep going. And it's almost to the point where it's, I don't want to say dangerous, but this thing definitely doesn't stop on a dime. The stopping in this car is definitely a problem and definitely something they need to look at. And then the other thing is just going to be the noise. It's very noisy in here. It's very loud. You know, it's fine when you're sort of cruising down the beach and stuff like that. And in Miami, for me, I'm reviewing this car, and you know, I had the roof down earlier, and it's fine, it's fun, it's an experience. We're in a Wrangler. But ultimately, I can see that getting old, especially if I was on a road trip. Having that much road noise, if I was on an interstate with trucks going by and stuff, I can see how that would get pretty annoying pretty quickly. Now, the $1 million question, would I buy a Jeep Wrangler? The answer to that is yes. I would buy this type of base model Jeep Wrangler. Let me be clear. I think the 392 V8 6.4 liter is awesome. I think it sounds amazing, but I wouldn't want to spend 80 grand on it. I also wouldn't want to spend 60 grand on a Sahara just so that it would give me leather seats and a bigger touchscreen. I think this base model is perfect. It's got the CarPlay. I don't mind the fact that it's got the manual windows. I think that adds to the rugged off-road Wrangler feel. But yeah, I'd buy the base model. I really enjoy this car. I've had a lot of fun whipping around with it the past couple of days while I'm doing this review. And even just sitting in traffic here, I feel like I'm cooler than everybody else. I have a Wrangler. They have regular people cars. I have this cool off-road box tough car. And it feels nice to have. Now, Consumer Reports, they don't recommend this car. They give it a 27 out of 85. What do they recommend in their segment? Well, they call this segment mid-size utility sport, and they throw in the Toyota Venza, and they throw in the Honda Passport, and they give the Venza like an 83 out of 85, and that's because it's a Toyota product and it has 5 out of 5 reliability. But realistically speaking, I think the Wrangler is alone in its category with something like the Ford Bronco. It's one of a kind. You can't compare it to those other vehicles. And is it unreliable? Yes, it's unreliable, very unreliable, but it's really fun to drive and it's really cool. So if I could buy it and keep it for 3 years, yeah, I think the Wrangler would be a great car.